policy of insurance, which is designed, and they're all designed in the same way in the province of Ontario, because it's really all driven by the Condominium Act of Ontario, and that's what sets out, who's responsible from an insurance standpoint, and it also sets out whether you go through insurance or not, who's responsible for the damage. So basically, what is the condominium responsible for? What are the owners responsible for? And then each of them can choose, depending on how large the claim is, if they want to actually submit those damages through their insurance or not. If you only have a little bit of damage below your deductible, then you may want to pay for that damage yourself and not be triggering a claim under your policy. So, but the responsibilities work the same in both ways. The condominium is responsible to insure all of the common elements of the condominium. So as you can imagine, all of the hallways, shared spaces, common rooms of the condominium corporation, elevators, common equipment, all of the structural equipment of the condominium. And everyone typically understands that. The condominium does also have some responsibility for repairing property after damage inside the unit. And that responsibility is really only a very basic amount of responsibility that the corporation has there, subject to your corporation's standard unit bylaw, which is bylaw number 2. And so it's my understanding that everybody in here has a copy of that bylaw number 2. So basically what that describes a standard unit. So what level of finishes inside each and every unit is the condominium corporation going to be responsible for? And then, your own unit insurance is going to be responsible for anything over and above that level of finishes that would be deemed a betterment and would be insured under your betterment's limit of coverage in your own personal policy. So the important thing to note in condominium insurance claims is that when sudden and accidental loss or damage happens in a condominium, first of all, it doesn't matter who or what was responsible. It matters whose property is damaged. So property that the condominium is responsible for, whether it is common elements, hallways, elevator systems, any of common element corporation property that's damaged, that's the condominium's insurance or their your operating account. If they don't submit it through their insurance, that would have to respond to pay for the repairs for that. Also, any damage in any of the units that are damaged that is up to the standard unit description, which again is relatively basic, but includes interior finished walls, baseboards, trim, doors primed with an off-white throughout, no baseboards in the bathroom or laundry. And you can kind of go through that whole standard unit bylaw. Any of that, those finishes that are described in that, the condominium would also be responsible to repair after damage, or their insurance policy would. Then each owner who suffers damage within their suite, you're going to have some insurance responsibilities. You're responsible if there was any damage to your own personal property, any movable property inside the suite, appliances, electronics, area rugs, furniture, clothing, that type of thing. And your own personal insurance would be able to respond to that. And then as an owner as well, you're also responsible for any of those what are called betterments and improvements. So any of those finishes over and above what's described in the corporation's standard unit bylaw, unit owners would be responsible, or their insurance would be responsible to repair or replace that property after damage. You'll note that in your corporation's standard unit bylaw, there are some things which, and is common to see in the condominium corporation, there are some things that are specifically excluded. And when they're specifically excluded from your standard unit bylaw, that means those become the unit owner's responsibility to insure. So that would be all flooring, any appliances, which is standard, cabinets, countertops, and lighting fixtures, unless, of course, any of those materials are specifically set out in Appendix A, which follows and provides some description of some of the things that are covered by the condominium corporation's policy. And then unit owners as well may have a responsibility, depending on the extent of damage in your unit. If you can't occupy the unit while the repairs are being done, and you've got to live in some sort of alternate accommodation, the Condominium Act does say that you must continue to pay your common element fees to the corporation at all times. So even if you're not occupying the condo unit, you still have to pay your common element fees. If you've got a mortgage or something like that on the unit with the bank, you've still got to pay those fees. But now if you have additional costs and have to live elsewhere, that's something else that can be covered by your own personal insurance. There's a section in a unit owner's policy called either loss of use of your unit or additional living expenses is what it would be called. And you can call upon that section. You'll typically have a limit of coverage in that section that would allow you those temporary accommodations while the repairs were being done. And again, that would be in the situation where your unit can't be occupied while the repairs are being done. The damage was too severe within your unit. So what happens in this situation? Again, the condominium has certain responsibilities up to the standard unit, and they have a contractor engaged on behalf of the condominium corporation. Unit owners in different situations may have significant enough damage where they've contacted their own insurance, in which case you would need to connect your insurance adjuster with the condominium corporation and their contractor and their insurance representative, just to make sure everybody is kind of connecting and determining who's responsible for what damage and can commission the repairs accordingly. Now, once the repairs are completed, again, each policy is going to pay for that property that it's responsible for and those obligations as I've just discussed. And then what happens after the fact in a condominium corporation is that those policies then they go their own separate ways. And what you don't get is your insurance policy, because it didn't originate from your unit. It doesn't go after the source of the fire, the cause of the fire, unless of course it was a contractor or some sort of outside source. But if it originated from a unit, they don't go after that unit where it originated from. And why that happens in a condominium, in your declarations, there's a section called a waiver of subrogation. And basically what that means is with respect to property insurance losses and property damage situations, unit owners don't sue unit owners, nor do their insurance companies. Unit owners don't go after the corporation. Corporation doesn't go after unit owners. Basically, each policy works very much like a no-fault insurance policy in response to the damaged property that it's responsible for. Why that is because condominiums are designed and registered under the Condominium Act, and when the lawyers draft the declarations, and they do so in the same way really for all condominiums across the province, they put that clause in there because if somebody accidentally burned the whole building down or caused damage to all the suites in the building, they'd have the condominium plus 200 plus other owners coming after them, and nobody could carry enough personal insurance, personal liability insurance to protect them from that scenario. So that's why we have that waiver of subrogation in your declarations, and that applies to those scenarios. So that's sort of a general overview of how that works. There is only one reason why we may want to find out where that loss originated from, where the original proximate cause of that loss is because the condominium corporation does have some ability under the Act to, instead of paying its own insurance deductible, it can actually transfer that or allocate that to the origin unit or a unit owner if their act or omission caused the damage. So that's something that could be a possibility if the corporation does opt to do that. And the corporation carries the deductible that's applicable to this particular loss is a $10,000 deductible. That deductible could be levied to the unit owner that was the origin unit of the incident. Instead of the corporation collectively paying that out of their common expenses, they could charge that back to the unit owner that unit owner, if they had a proper unit owner's policy, could put that through as a part of their claim and get coverage for that chargeback in their own policy.